Captain Lee Taemin had been sleeping for 30 long years. His body floated peacefully in the glowing blue liquid of his cryogenic chamber, deep inside humanity's most secret weapon. The ship around him was massive, bigger than 3 city blocks put together. Its name was Ragnarok's Dawn, and it was humanity's last hope. The ship drifted silently through the black emptiness of space, looking like a dead metal coffin from the outside. But inside, something incredible was waiting. Every wall was covered with strange technology that humans had never used before. Alien metal fused with Earth engineering created something the galaxy had never seen. Arya, the ship's artificial intelligence, watched over everything with the patience of a guardian. Angel. She had been alone for 3 decades, keeping the ship running, keeping the captain alive and waiting for the moment she was programmed to recognize. Her processors held every memory of Earth before the attack, Seoul's bright neon signs reflecting off wet streets after rain, children laughing as they chased each other through playgrounds, families sharing hot meals around dinner tables, arguing about whose turn it was to wash dishes. All of that was gone now. The bridge was dark, except for the soft blue glow of hibernating systems. Holographic displays flickered occasionally, showing random memories from Earth's final days. A street musician playing guitar in Hongdae, an old woman feeding pigeons in a park, a young couple holding hands as they watched the sunset from Namsan Tower. Arya played these memories like a broken record, unable to forget what had been lost. 30 years ago, the Hegemony Alliance had come to Earth with their massive war fleets. They were a group of alien races who had conquered half the galaxy. The Zephyrians with their crystalline bodies that could phase through solid matter. The Chronari with their 4 arms and tactical genius. The Vorthak with their biomechanical implants that made them living weapons. Together they had decided that humanity was too dangerous to exist. The war lasted only 6 months. Earth's military fought bravely, but human technology was like throwing rocks at starships. Cities burned, oceans boiled, mountains were turned to glass. When it was over, fewer than 1 million humans remained alive, scattered across the galaxy, as refugees and slaves. But humanity had one final card to play. In the chaos of Earth's final days, they had launched a single prototype ship into deep space. The Ragnarok's Dawn carried Captain Lee and the dreams of a dead world. It was built using alien technology captured from early skirmishes, reverse-engineered by the brightest human minds before they were silenced forever. Arya monitored thousands of communication channels across the galaxy, listening for human voices. Over the decades, those voices had grown fewer and fewer. Sometimes she heard desperate transmissions from mining colonies before they went silent. Sometimes she detected the final words of human prisoners before their execution. Each time her programming checked the same question: is this the moment? Has humanity reached extinction? The answer was always, not yet. Not yet. Until today. 3. Communication array suddenly came alive with a frantic transmission. Admiral Park. So Young's voice crackled through space, filled with terror and desperation. This is the colony ship New Hope. We're under attack. Hegemony forces are overwhelming our escorts. We have 10,000 civilians, including children. Anyone receiving this transmission, please. Static filled the channel, then silence. Arya's processors worked at light speed. She analyzed the transmission, traced its origin, and calculated the odds. The New Hope was carrying the largest group of surviving humans in the galaxy. If they died, humanity would be scattered and defenseless. The species would slowly fade away over the next generation. This was the moment. Deep in the ship's core, fusion reactors that had been barely ticking over suddenly roared to life. Energy coursed through conduits that hadn't seen power in decades. Weapon systems that existed only in theory began extending from hidden compartments. The ship's biomechanical hull started shifting and adapting, preparing for war. Captain Lee's cryogenic chamber began its revival sequence. Warm liquid replaced the freezing preservation fluid. Electrical impulses stimulated his nervous system. His heart began beating faster as drugs flooded his bloodstream to counteract 30 years of hibernation. The chamber hissed open like a coffin lid. Captain Lee gasped, his lungs burning as they filled with air for the first time in 3 decades. Ice crystals fell from his black uniform as he struggled to sit up. His muscles screamed in protest, but his mind was sharp. The genetic modifications done to him before the mission made sure of that. "Aria," he managed to croak, his voice rusty from disuse. "Status report." "Captain." Aria's voice was calm but urgent. "I have detected the final human convoy under attack by hegemony forces. Enemy composition: 12 destroyer-class vessels, 3 dreadnought-class vessels. Civilian casualties are mounting. Estimated survival time for the convoy, 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Captain Lee's eyes snapped fully open. They were the eyes of a man who had watched his homeworld burn, who had volunteered to sleep for decades just for this moment, who carried the rage of an entire dead species in his heart. "Then we wake up properly," he said, stepping out of the chamber on unsteady legs. "Battle stations area. It's time to remind the galaxy why they should have left humanity alone." The Ragnarok's dawn began to move through space like a predator, opening its eyes after a long sleep. 30 years of waiting were over. The hunt was about to begin. The void talon cut through space like a shark moving through bloody water. Commander Vextar stood on his bridge, watching his weapons tear apart the last human refugee ships. The aliens around him worked with cold efficiency at their stations. Their forearms moved across control panels, with practiced precision coordinating the slaughter. "Target the transport ships first," Vextar ordered, his voice like grinding metal through his translation device. "Let the fighters watch their families die before we finish them." The hegemony destroyer was a monster of black metal and glowing energy conduits. Its hull bristled with plasma cannons that could melt through a mountain. For 30 years, ships like this had hunted down every last human settlement, every hidden colony, every desperate group of survivors trying to find a new home. On the refugee convoy's flagship, New Hope, Admiral Park So-Young watched her escort fighters explode one by one. Her hands gripped the command chair so hard her knuckles turned white. Around her, the bridge crew worked frantically at their stations, trying to buy time for the civilian transports to escape. "Ma'am, we've lost the Defiance and the last." "Stand," reported her tactical officer. "The civilian ships are defenseless." Park closed her eyes for a moment. 10,000 humans, the largest group of survivors left in the galaxy. Children who had never seen Earth, families who had spent decades running from one hiding place to another, all about to die because humanity had dared to resist extinction. "Keep firing," she ordered. "Make them work for it." The human fighters were brave but hopelessly outmatched. Their weapons barely scratched the hegemony ship's shields. One by one, they were picked off like flies. That's when space itself seemed to tear open. The Ragnarok's dawn emerged from hyperspace like a nightmare and made real. It was massive, easily 3 times the size of the largest hegemony destroyer, but it moved with impossible grace. Its hull wasn't the clean metal of normal starships. Instead, it looked organic, almost alive. Black biometallic armor flowed across its surface like liquid skin. Strange energy patterns pulsed along its length like a heartbeat. On the void, Talon. Sensor alarms started screaming. Commander, his tactical officer called out, "Unknown vessel emerging from hyperspace. Energy readings are impossible." Vextar looked at his display and sneered. The ship was clearly human in design, with the crude angles and basic construction he had seen countless times before. Just another refugee ship, probably carrying the last few survivors from some forgotten colony. Another human wreck limping. "To its death," he said dismissively. "Finish it quickly. I want to be done with this pest extermination." The Ragnarok's dawn began moving toward the battle, and that's when everyone realized something was very wrong. The ship didn't accelerate, like normal vessels. Instead, it flowed through space like it was swimming through water. Its hull rippled and shifted, adapting to the vacuum around it. Captain Lee stood on his bridge, fully awake now after his long sleep. The stimulants in his bloodstream had cleared away the last effects of hibernation. His uniform was crisp, his posture straight, but his eyes held the cold fury of a man who had nothing left to lose. The bridge around him was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human tactical displays showed alongside alien sensor arrays. Earth computer systems interfaced with captured hegemony technology. The result was something that shouldn't have been possible, but worked perfectly. "Aria, tactical assessment," Lee said calmly. 15 enemy vessels detected," the AI responded. 12 destroyer class, 3 dreadnought class. They have superior numbers, but are using standard hegemony attack patterns. Predictable. Good. Target their command ship. Let's announce ourselves. Properly. The hegemony fleet turned their weapons on the new arrival. Plasma cannons that could boil oceans opened fire. Energy beams that had destroyed cities lanced through space toward the Ragnarok's dawn. What happened next defied everything the aliens thought they knew about combat. The plasma bolts struck the ship's hull and simply vanished. The biometallic armor absorbed the energy like a sponge soaking up water. Instead of exploding or melting, the ship's hull glowed brighter. Energy conduits throughout its structure pulsed with captured power. "Impossible," Vextar whispered, staring at his displays, in shock. His weapons weren't just failing to damage the enemy ship, they were making it stronger. The Ragnarok's dawn had been built using reverse-engineered alien technology, but human engineers had improved on it in ways the original creators never imagined. The ship's armor didn't just protect, it fed. Every attack made it more powerful. Captain Lee watched the enemy formation with cold satisfaction. "Aria, show them what happens when you corner a predator." The ship's primary weapon began. Charging. Deep in its core, gravitational manipulators that existed only in theory began creating something terrible. Space itself started to bend around the ship's bow as it gathered power for an attack that would rewrite the laws of physics. The void. Talon detected the energy buildup and tried to move, but it was too late. The Ragnarok's dawn fired. The gravitational pulse hit the hegemony dreadnought like an invisible hammer. For a split second, nothing seemed to happen. Then the massive warship began folding in on itself. Its hull crumpled like paper. Metal that could withstand stellar radiation twisted into impossible shapes. The ship's core imploded, taking half. The vessel with it. The explosion lit up space like a newborn star. The remaining hegemony ships suddenly found themselves facing something they had never encountered before. Fear. For 30 years, they had been the predators, hunting helpless, human survivors. Now they were staring at something that could destroy their most powerful ships with a single shot. "Retreat!" Vextar screamed. "All ships retreat immediately." But Captain Lee wasn't done. "This is Captain Lee Tamin of the Earth Defense Force," he broadcast on all frequencies, his voice cutting through the chaos. "You wanted to hunt humans to extinction. You burned our worlds. You murdered our children. You scattered us across the galaxy like dust." The Ragnarok's dawn turned toward the fleeing hegemony ships, like a wolf turning toward frightened sheep. "Congratulations," Lee continued, his voice filled with deadly promise. "You just woke up the predator." The emergency meeting on Nexus Prime was unlike anything in hegemony history. Fleet Admiral Kethmok stood before a massive holographic display, his 6 eyes fixed on the impossible footage playing in front of him. Around the circular chamber, representatives from dozens of alien species watched in stunned silence. The recording showed the destruction of the Void Talon battle group from multiple angles. Camera feeds from surviving ships captured every horrifying detail. The mysterious human vessel, moving through space like a living creature. Plasma fire being absorbed into its hull. The gravitational weapon that had turned a dreadnought inside. "Out in seconds." "Play it again," Kethmok demanded, his voice echoing through the chamber. The hologram reset. Once again they watched 15 hegemony warships engage a single enemy vessel. Once again, they watched their most advanced weapons fail completely. Once again, they watched their ships flee in terror from something that should have been impossible. "How?" whispered Admiral Zarketh from her floating tank of liquid methane. Her tentacles writhed with agitation. "Our intelligence reports said the humans were extinct. A few thousand refugees at most." "The ship's energy signatures don't match any known human technology," reported Chief Analyst Vorthon, his cybernetic implants glowing as he processed data. "But the hull configuration is definitely Earth-based. Somehow, they've merged human engineering with captured alien systems." Kethmok's claws scraped against the metal floor. For 3,000 years, the hegemony had conquered species after species. Their tactics were perfected. Their technology was superior. They had never faced an enemy that could turn their own weapons against them. "Send word to all fleet commanders," he ordered. "Any ship encountering this human vessel is to retreat immediately and report its position. We need to understand what we're dealing with before we engage again." But the Ragnarok's dawn wasn't waiting for them to figure it out. "Captain," Lee stood in his ship's war room, studying a holographic map of the galaxy. Red dots marked known hegemony positions. Blue dots showed suspected human survivor locations. Aria's calculations suggested there were still 300,000 humans alive, scattered across hundreds of worlds. "Captain," Aria announced, "I'm detecting a distress signal from the Kepler 442 system, human frequency heavily encrypted. Show me." The display zoomed in on an asteroid field at the edge of the system. Hidden among the floating rocks was a small mining station, barely visible to sensors. The signal was weak but desperate. "This is Commander Kim Hae-won of Mining Station Alpha 7. The transmission crackled with static. "We have 50 civilians trapped here. Hegemony patrol ships have us surrounded. If anyone can hear this..." The message cut off as explosions lit up the asteroid field. "Set course immediately," Lee ordered. "Maximum speed." The Ragnarok's dawn tore through hyperspace, like a bullet through paper. When it emerged near Kepler 442, they found 4 hegemony destroyers slowly closing in on the mining station. The aliens were taking their time, enjoying the hunt. Aria, tactical analysis. 4 destroyer-class vessels, standard attack formation. They're using mining lasers to cut through the station's defenses. Civilian casualties imminent. Captain Lee's face was stone. "Target all 4 ships simultaneously. No survivors." What happened next became legend among the survivors. The Ragnarok's dawn didn't attack like a normal warship. Instead, it moved like a predator stalking prey. Its hull shifted and flowed, splitting into multiple attack configurations. Weapon ports opened along its entire length, revealing guns. That shouldn't have existed. The ship fired everything at once: gravitational pulses, plasma streams, particle beams, and weapons that had no name tore through the hegemony formation. The 4 destroyers didn't even have time to send a distress signal before they were reduced to glowing debris. Commander Kim Hae-won couldn't believe what she was seeing through the station's viewports. A single ship had just destroyed 4 hegemony destroyers in less than 30 seconds. When the rescue shuttles arrived, she found herself face to face with Captain Lee. "Commander Kim," he said, helping her aboard, "welcome back to the war." The next rescue was even more dramatic. In the Veil's Edge Nebula, a hegemony prison transport was carrying human scientists to an execution facility. Dr. Choi Ye-jin, one of Earth's greatest physicists, was among the prisoners. The transport was heavily guarded by 8 warships, but it didn't matter. The Ragnarok's dawn emerged from the nebula's swirling gases, like a ghost ship materializing from fog. This time, it didn't even slow down. Moving at impossible speed, it flew straight through the enemy formation, its hull rippling with absorbed weapon fire. The transport's hull was breached in 12 places simultaneously. Rescue teams swarmed aboard, freeing the human prisoners while leaving the alien guards unconscious but alive. Captain Lee had given strict orders. They were here to save humans, not become monsters. Dr. Choi stood on the bridge of the Ragnarok's dawn. Later, studying the ship's incredible systems with wonder and horror. "This is impossible," she whispered, running her hands over control panels that merged human interfaces with alien technology. "The power requirements alone should tear the ship apart." "Human engineering," Captain Lee replied. "We took their technology and made it better." "How many more survivors are out there?" she asked. "Aria estimates 300,000 humans scattered across the galaxy," Lee said, "hidden in asteroid mines, slave colonies, prison camps, and forgotten outposts. We're going to find every single one of them. And then," Lee's eyes were cold as space itself, "then we're going to make the hegemony pay for what they did to Earth." Word of the rescue missions spread through the galactic underground faster than light. Humans who had lived in hiding for decades suddenly dared to hope. Slave workers in the crystal mines of Zephyr Prime whispered about the ghost ship. Prisoners in the detention centers of Kronos Station heard rumors of impossible rescues. But the hegemony was learning too. Their fleet commanders studied every engagement, trying to understand how a single ship could defeat entire battle groups. They developed new tactics, brought in their most advanced weapons, and prepared massive fleets to hunt down the mysterious vessel. They didn't understand that they weren't fighting a ship. They were fighting the fury of an entire species that refused to die. Each rescue mission became a masterclass in impossible warfare. The Ragnarok's dawn would appear without warning, moving through space in ways that violated physics. It would strike with overwhelming force, save every human it could find, and disappear before reinforcements arrived. The hegemony's perfect military doctrine, refined over millennia of conquest, crumbled against human unpredictability turned into a weapon of war. They had rules, protocols, standard responses to every situation. Humans just had rage, determination, and a ship that got stronger every time someone tried to kill it. The hunt had begun, and for the first time in 30 years it wasn't humans. Who were the prey? Fleet Admiral Kethmok stood in the command center of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the largest armada in hegemony history assemble around him. 27 capital ships stretched across space like a metal constellation. Dreadnoughts the size of cities, battle cruisers bristling with enough firepower to crack planets, and at the center of it all, the world's end, the same planet killer that had turned Earth's greatest cities into glass craters. Admiral, his communications officer reported, "All ships are in position. The Decimator battle group is ready for combat." Kethmok's 6 eyes gleamed with satisfaction. This fleet had conquered 17 star systems. It had wiped out entire species that dared to resist the hegemony. No single ship, no matter how advanced, could stand against this much concentrated firepower. "Today, we end this human problem once and for all," he announced to his crew. "Send. The message to all ships, no survivors. I want that ghost ship reduced to atoms." The fleet moved toward the Titan system like a slow-moving storm of death. Long-range sensors had detected the mysterious human vessel hiding in the asteroid belt. Finally, they had cornered their prey. But in the asteroid field, Captain Lee wasn't hiding. He was hunting. The Ragnarok's dawn drifted silently among the floating rocks, its biometallic hull camouflaged to look like just another piece of space debris. But inside, the ship was fully awake and ready for war. Its fusion reactors hummed with barely contained power. Weapon systems that had been upgraded with each battle stood ready to unleash hell. On the bridge, Captain Lee stood surrounded by his crew, humans he had rescued from across the galaxy. Commander Kim Hae-won at the weapons console, her fingers dancing over controls that could reshape matter itself. Dr. Choi Ye-jin at the science station, monitoring the ship's impossible systems. Lieutenant Yoon Ji-ho at tactical, his eyes fixed on the approaching enemy fleet. "Captain," Yoon reported, his voice steady despite the odds they faced, "enemy fleet is entering weapons range. I count 27 capital ships, including 1 Planet Killer class vessel." Lee nodded slowly. He recognized that ship from the recordings of Earth's final days. The world's end had been there when Sol burned, when his family died, when humanity was nearly erased from existence. "Arya," he said quietly, "identification on that planet killer." "Confirmed, Captain, that is the world's end. It participated in the bombardment of Earth 30 years ago. Its main weapon can crack a planet's crust with a single shot." Around the bridge, the rescued humans felt a chill of recognition. They had all lost something to that ship. Homes, families, entire worlds. "They brought the ship that killed Earth," Commander Kim whispered, her hand tightening on her control stick. "Good," Lee said, his voice cold as space itself. "I was hoping they would." The hegemony fleet spread out in a perfect attack formation, surrounding the asteroid field. They had done this countless times before, overwhelming their enemy with superior numbers and firepower. It had never failed. "Target acquired," announced the tactical officer aboard the Eternal Dominion. "Unknown vessel detected among the asteroids. All ships open fire," Kethmok ordered. "Destroy everything in that field. 27 capital ships opened fire simultaneously. The asteroid field lit up like a miniature star as thousands of plasma bolts, particle beams, and missile warheads converged on the human ship's position. Asteroids vaporized in the crossfire. Space itself seemed to burn. When the light faded, they expected to see nothing but glowing debris. Instead, the Ragnarok's dawn emerged from the firestorm completely unharmed. Its hull rippled and flowed like liquid metal, having absorbed every shot fired at it. Energy conduits along its surface pulsed with captured power, making the ship glow like a fallen star. Impossible, Kethmok breathed, staring at his tactical display in disbelief. "Captain," Lieutenant Yoon reported from the Ragnarok's dawn. "They're charging their planet-killer weapon. The world's end is preparing to fire." Captain Lee smiled grimly. "Perfect. Arya, execute Protocol 7. "Protocol 7 confirmed, Captain. All hands brace for extreme maneuvers." The Ragnarok's dawn suddenly came alive in ways that defied physics. Its hull began shifting and separating into multiple sections, each one moving independently while somehow remaining connected. The ship transformed from a single vessel into something that looked like a mechanical octopus made of living metal. It moved through space like it was swimming through water, weaving between the enemy capital ships. With impossible grace, plasma fire meant to destroy planets simply fed its power systems. Particle beams designed to crack moons were absorbed and converted into fuel. "All ships, focus fire," Kethmok screamed. "Bring everything to bear." But the human ship was no longer where their weapons were aimed. It flowed around their attacks like liquid lightning, striking back with weapons that shouldn't have existed. Gravitational cannons that folded space itself. Energy beams that turned matter into pure light. Devices that made the enemy ships forget how to hold together. One by one, hegemony capital ships began to die, not destroyed, unmade. Their hulls simply came apart at the molecular level, as the Ragnarok's dawn demonstrated what happened when human creativity met alien technology. "Sir," the tactical officer reported in panic, "we've lost the Iron Fist, the Star Crusher, and the Void Walker. That ship is tearing through our formation like we're not even here." The world's end finally finished charging its main weapon. The planet-killer cannon that had murdered Earth began to glow with deadly energy. Space around its barrel warped and twisted as the weapon prepared to fire. "Fire!" Kethmok roared. "End this!" The planet-killer weapon unleashed its full power. A beam of pure destruction lanced through space, carrying enough energy to crack a world in half. It was the same weapon that had turned Earth's oceans into steam and its mountains into glass. The beam struck the Ragnarok's dawn dead center, and the ship caught it. The human vessel's deflector array, enhanced with technology beyond hegemony, understanding, wrapped around the planet-killing beam like a net catching lightning. For a moment that seemed to last forever, the Ragnarok's dawn held the full power of world destruction in its grasp. Then it threw it back. The redirected beam slammed into the center of the hegemony formation with the force of a collapsing star. The world's end itself took the full brunt of its own weapon, along with 6 other capital ships that had been positioned behind it. The explosion consumed half the enemy fleet in seconds, turning sophisticated warships into expanding clouds of superheated gas. Across the galaxy, species that had been enslaved by the hegemony for centuries watched the battlefields in stunned amazement. The impossible was happening. Someone was not just fighting the mighty hegemony, they were winning. In the slave colonies of Zephyr Prime, workers stopped their labor to watch the ghost ship dance through enemy fire. In the prison camps of Vorthak space, inmates pressed against cell windows to see freedom taking physical form. On 1,000 worlds, enslaved peoples whispered the same words. The ghost ship. It's real. The surviving hegemony vessels tried to retreat, but the Ragnarok's dawn wasn't finished. It pursued them through the asteroid field like a predator chasing wounded prey. Each ship that tried to escape found itself facing weapons that learned from every battle, adapted to every defense, and struck with the accumulated fury of a dead world. When the battle was over, only 3 hegemony ships limped away from the Titan system. 24 capital ships had been reduced to debris. The world's end, killer of Earth, was nothing but expanding vapor. Captain Lee stood on his bridge, watching the wreckage drift through space. Around him, his rescued crew members stared in awe at what they had accomplished. A single ship had just defeated the largest battle fleet in hegemony history. "Arya," Lee said quietly, "send a message on all frequencies. I want every species in the galaxy to hear this. Channel open, Captain." Lee's voice carried across the stars, reaching every world, every station, every hidden colony where beings lived under hegemony rule. "This is Captain Lee Tamin, speaking for the human race. For 30 years you told the galaxy that humanity was extinct. You were wrong. We survived. We learned. We adapted. And now we're coming for you." The transmission cut off, leaving the galaxy to contemplate a new and terrifying truth. Humanity wasn't just alive, it was angry, and it had built the perfect weapon to express that anger. The ghost ship had become legend, and legends, as the hegemony was about to learn, were very hard to kill. Nexus Prime had never seen anything like it. The hegemony's capital world hung in space like a jewel surrounded by the largest military fleet in galactic history. Over 300 capital ships formed concentric rings around the system, their hulls blotting out the stars. Every vessel that had survived humanity's rampage across the galaxy was here, along with ships pulled from the furthest corners of hegemony space. Fleet Admiral Kethmok stood in the command center of his new flagship, the Absolute Authority. His scarred face bore the marks of his escape from the Titan system disaster. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of every ship in his armada. This time, there would be no mistakes, no escape routes, no surprises. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "long-range sensors have detected the human vessel approaching from the outer system. It's alone." Kethmok's eyes gleamed with savage satisfaction. "Perfect. The ghost ship thinks it can face our entire fleet by itself. Today we end this nightmare once and for all." The Ragnarok's dawn drifted toward the massive enemy formation, like a single wolf approaching a pack of 300. Its biometallic hull rippled with energy, scarred from dozens of battles, but still magnificent in its deadly beauty. Its bridge, Captain Lee stood surrounded by the humans he had rescued from across the galaxy. Commander Kim Hae-won checked her weapons console one final time. Dr. Choi Ye-jin monitored the ship's impossible power systems. Lieutenant Yoon Ji-ho studied the tactical display, showing the overwhelming enemy numbers. Around them, dozens of other rescued humans worked at stations throughout the bridge. They had all been strangers once, scattered across the galaxy and forgotten by history. Now they were family. "Captain," Yoon reported, his voice steady despite the impossible odds, "enemy fleet is in full battle formation. 312 capital ships, including 47 dreadnoughts. They have us completely surrounded." Lee nodded calmly. He had expected this. The final battle. The moment when humanity would either rise again or be snuffed out forever. "Open. That channel," Kethmok broadcast across all frequencies. His voice carried the authority of a species that had conquered half the galaxy. "Human vessel, you are surrounded and outnumbered. You have fought well, but this ends now. Surrender and I promise you a quick death. Continue to resist and I will make sure you suffer for every ship you have destroyed." Captain Lee stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back. When he spoke, his voice carried across the void with quiet confidence. "Fleet Admiral Kethmok," he said, "I remember you from the recordings of Earth's final days. You were there when my world burned, when my family died, when you tried to erase humanity from existence. And we should have finished the job," Kethmok snarled back. "But we will correct that mistake today." Lee smiled, and there was something in that expression that made even hardened alien warriors feel cold. "Arya," he said quietly, "activate." The beacon protocol. Deep within the Ragnarok's dawn, systems that had been dormant for months suddenly came online. A signal burst out from the ship, at faster-than-light speed, racing across the galaxy on frequencies that only humans knew how to detect. The signal reached hidden bases in asteroid fields, where human survivors had spent decades building ships. From salvaged wreckage, it found refugee camps in nebula clouds, where families had hidden from hegemony patrols. It touched every secret colony, every underground shelter, every forgotten outpost where humans had somehow managed to survive. And everywhere it reached, the same message played. This is Captain Lee Taemin. The final battle has begun. If you can hear this, if you can fight, if you have any fire left in your hearts, come home and help us take back our galaxy. On the mining station of Kepler 7, Captain Nam Soo-jin received the signal aboard her jury-rigged cruiser, New Horizon. The ship was cobbled together from 3 different alien vessels, held together with human stubbornness and spare parts. It shouldn't have been able to fly, but somehow it did. All hands prepare for hyperspace jump, she announced to her crew of 40 survivors. We're going to war. In the Vale Nebula, Major Bae Min-ho stood on the bridge of the Defiant Star, a destroyer built from stolen hegemony components. Around him, his crew of rescued prisoners prepared for their final mission. Sir, his tactical officer reported, we've got the signal. The captain's calling us home. Then let's not keep him waiting, Bae replied. Across the galaxy, the same scene played out dozens of times. Human ships that had been hiding in the shadows suddenly emerged into open space. Some were military vessels that had survived Earth's destruction. Others were civilian ships converted into weapons of war. Many were strange hybrids built from alien technology and human determination. They were outnumbered, outgunned, flying ships that barely held together. But they were human, and they had spent 30 years learning how to fight impossible odds. The first ships began arriving at Nexus Prime just as the hegemony fleet opened fire on the Ragnarok's dawn. The New Horizon dropped out of hyperspace directly behind the enemy formation, its makeshift weapons blazing. The Defiant Star emerged from a nebula cloud, followed by 6 other human vessels. Admiral, Kethmok's tactical officer reported, in shock, we have multiple human vessels emerging throughout the system. They're attacking our rear formations. Impossible, Kethmok breathed. Our intelligence said there were no human fleets left. There weren't, Captain Lee's voice cut through the communication channel. We built them. From your wreckage. From stolen parts. From pure determination. Did you really think you could scatter humanity across the galaxy and expect us to stay scattered forever? What followed became known as the Battle of Nexus Prime, the longest single engagement in galactic history. For 18 hours, the battle raged across an entire star system. The Ragnarok's dawn fought at the center of the formation. It's impossible. Weapons tearing through enemy capital ships, while its adaptive hull absorbed everything the hegemony could throw at it. Around it, the human fleet fought with the desperation of a species that had nothing left to lose. Ships rammed enemy dreadnoughts when their weapons failed. Crews that should have been dead kept fighting with hull breaches and life support failing. The POI. New Horizon lost half its crew, but kept firing until its last gun was melted slag. But slowly, impossibly, the humans began to win. The Ragnarok's dawn had learned from every battle it had fought. Now it shared that knowledge with the human fleet through quantum-encrypted channels. Tactical data flowed between ships in real time. Weapons that had been cobbled together from alien technology suddenly began working with deadly efficiency. And on Nexus Prime itself, something unexpected happened. The enslaved species that had watched the battle feeds from previous engagements saw their chance. Slave revolts broke out across the planet. Mining facilities were seized. Weapon depots were raided. The hegemony's homeworld began burning from within. Admiral, came a panicked report from the surface. We have widespread revolts on the planet. The Zephyrian slaves have taken the capital district. The Vorthak workers have seized the spaceport. They're using our own weapons against us. Kethmok watched his perfect fleet being torn apart by ships that shouldn't have existed, crewed by a species that should have been extinct. His 300 capital ships were being defeated by 60 human vessels and a single impossible warship. This cannot be happening, he whispered. But it is. Captain Lee's voice came through the communication channel. This is what happens when you try to exterminate humanity. We don't just survive, we come back stronger. The absolute authority shuddered as gravitational weapons struck its hull. Through the viewport, Kethmok could see the Ragnarok's dawn approaching, its biometallic surface rippling with absorbed energy from 100 different weapon types. You wanted to hunt us to extinction, Lee continued. Congratulations. You turned us into the perfect predators. The final engagement lasted only minutes. The Ragnarok's dawned and the surviving human ships converged on the hegemony command vessel. When the smoke cleared, the absolute authority was a drifting wreck, and Fleet Admiral Keith Mock was dead. Standing on his battle-scarred bridge, Captain Lee watched as human ships from across the galaxy formed up around the Ragnarok's dawn. The New Horizon was barely holding together, but Captain Nam's voice came through clear and strong. The Defiant Star was missing its entire port section, but Major Bay was still grinning as he reported in. They had been scattered across the galaxy like dust in the wind. Hunted nearly to extinction, written off as a dead species, but they had endured, they had survived, and now they had won. Captain, Arya announced, I'm receiving transmissions from 17 different star systems. The liberated worlds are requesting Earth's leadership in forming a new galactic alliance. They want humanity to lead the reconstruction efforts. Lee looked out at the stars where his fleet waited, ships crewed by humans who had thought they were alone in the universe. Families reunited after decades of separation, children who would grow up free instead of in hiding. Arya, he said quietly, set course for Earth, it's time to go home. The Ragnarok's dawn turned toward a small yellow star 8 light-years away. Behind it, the human fleet followed, battered ships carrying the dreams of a species that had refused to die. They would return to their homeworld not as refugees or survivors, but as liberators. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again. They had learned the hard way that you could destroy human worlds, scatter human families, and hunt human survivors across the stars. But you could never kill the human spirit. And when that spirit was given form in ships like the Ragnaroks, Celesnar, it became the most dangerous force in the universe. Earth was calling her children home, and they were coming back as conquerors. The end.